Welcome back to another episode of FPLFreshly Insights. This episode is very much about perspective. Fantasy Premier League seasons are rarely defined by big swings alone. More often, they're shaped by the quieter weeks, the marginal calls, and how you respond when things don't quite go your way. Gameweek 22 was one of those weeks. A small red arrow, a -4 hit, and a score that sat just above the average, not ideal, but far from damaging. The key now is understanding what happened, why decisions were made, and how the team is positioned moving forward into Gameweek 23. Gameweek 22 review small margins, no panic. Gameweek 22 finished on 37 points, slightly above the overall average, but still resulting in another small red arrow. It's never enjoyable seeing rank slip, especially after taking a hit, but this was not a game week that requires drastic reaction. In goal, Rofs delivered modestly, which largely reflected the fixture difficulty rather than a failure of selection. Sometimes goalkeepers simply tick over, and that was the case here. Defensively, there were positives and frustrations. Gabriel once again showed his value with a solid return, continuing to justify his place as a dependable long-term asset. Timber also contributed, reinforcing the idea that Arsenal defensive coverage still has merit even in tougher fixtures. Kadioglu didn't return, but his role and minutes remain encouraging, while the bench contribution from Chalobah was one of the brighter notes of the week. Midfield was mixed. Bruno Fernandes stood out with a strong return, immediately rewarding the decision to bring him back despite the hit. That alone helped soften the impact of the -4. Foden had a quieter outing, but his underlying involvement remained reassuring, but this will be his final game for me if he starts. Rodgers and Rice were steady rather than spectacular, but neither felt like a mistake. Up front, Haaland was captained once again. The return wasn't explosive, but it was enough to avoid damage. Watkins and Calvert-Lewin struggled to make an impact, and this was an area where the team didn't quite fire, though the fixtures themselves offered limited upside. Overall, Gameweek 22 felt frustrating rather than poor. The -4 didn't pay off immediately in rank terms, but the process behind it remains sound, and the squad came through the week without structural damage. Reflecting on the -4 hit. Taking a hit always brings added scrutiny, especially when the outcome is a red arrow. In this case, the decision to move early for security and structure, particularly with Bruno Fernandes, was made with more than one game week in mind. The hit wasn't about chasing points. It was about stabilizing the midfield, improving minutes security, and setting the team up for the next run. Bruno's return in Gameweek 22 already justified part of that thinking, and the real value of the move should become clearer over the coming weeks. Sometimes the timing doesn't align perfectly with the points, but that doesn't mean the decision was wrong. Gameweek 23 team overview. Looking ahead to Gameweek 23, the team feels well-balanced and competitive, even if it's not packed with high-risk differentials. Kelleher starts in goal with a home fixture, offering a reasonable chance of points. The defense is built around Arsenal again, with Gabriel and Timber both starting at home. Chalobah and Mukiel provide additional coverage, giving flexibility depending on how fixtures unfold. Midfield is where the structure really shows. Foden, Rodgers, Rice, and Bruno Fernandes all start, offering a blend of creativity, minute security, and upside. Bruno, despite a tougher fixture, remains central to everything his team does and carries consistent involvement. Up front, Haaland remains captain. The fixture is favorable, and even in quieter weeks, his ownership and ceiling make him the safest armband choice. Watkins partners him, with another away fixture that still carries potential. The bench is functional rather than explosive, but it's capable of stepping in if rotation or late surprises occur. Clean sheet odds, managing expectations. Looking at the clean sheet projections for Gameweek 23, there are clear tiers emerging. Manchester City and Arsenal sit near the top of the odds, which supports continued investment in their defensive assets despite tougher opposition. Tottenham, Everton, and Brentford follow closely behind, offering situational value rather than guarantees. Chelsea's clean sheet odds are more uncertain this week, particularly with a new manager settling in. That uncertainty doesn't rule out defensive returns, but it does encourage caution rather than overcommitment. Lower down the list, teams like Fulham, Brighton, and Liverpool have reduced clean sheet probabilities, reinforcing the idea that defenders from these sides should be viewed as bonus-dependent rather than clean sheet-reliant. Overall, this looks like a game week where defensive points may be spread thinly, and expecting perfection at the back could lead to frustration. Transfer targets, GW23 watchlist. Alongside the general differentials discussion, it's also worth highlighting a small group of specific transfer target players drawn from external analysis, notably Ingenuity Fantasy. These are not must-buy recommendations, but rather useful reference points when assessing value, minute security, and short-term upside. Patrick Dorgu, 4.2 M £, a budget defender offering attacking potential alongside clean sheet upside, making him an interesting enabler option. Wesley Fofana, 4.4 M £, set for increased minutes following defensive injuries, offering short-term value in the Chelsea back line. Ismaila Sarr, 6.3 M £, a direct attacking threat with favorable fixtures, capable of delivering returns in transition-heavy matches. Ahmed Diallo, 6.2 M £, returning from international duty, providing creativity and attacking threat from wide areas. Krupi Jr., 4.6 M £, a low-cost forward with strong minutes security and a fixture run that offers potential value. These players remain watchlist options rather than urgent moves, but they help frame where opportunities may emerge as Gameweek 23 approaches and squad structures begin to shift. Gameweek 23 predictions. West Ham 1-3 Sunderland. Burnley 1-2 Tottenham. Fulham 2-1 Brighton. Brentford 2-1 Nottingham Forest. Manchester City 3-0 Wolves. Bournemouth 1-3 Liverpool. Crystal Palace 1-2 Chelsea. Newcastle 2-2 Aston Villa. Everton 1-1 Leeds. Arsenal 2-1 Manchester United. There are plenty of tight fixtures here, which once again highlights how fine the margins could be in Gameweek 23. Final thoughts. Another small red arrow is never ideal, especially when paired with a hit, but this is not a moment for panic. The squad remains well-structured, the decisions are rooted in logic rather than emotion, and the upcoming fixtures offer plenty of opportunity to steady the ship. At this stage of the season, staying patient and trusting process matters more than chasing every short-term swing. The difference between progress and stagnation often comes down to how you respond to weeks like this. Gameweek 23 is another chance to let the team breathe, absorb variance, and hopefully turn those small margins back in your favor. Thanks for watching to this episode of FPL Freshly Insights. Good luck for Gameweek 23, and see you soon.